Well, hello, friends. It's Ross here with another episode of the Positivity Wins podcast. And before we get started, I just want to thank you for joining in here on episode 5. This has been a really exciting journey, and we are launching something brand new. So I really appreciate everyone's support, the feedback, the comments, the shares, the likes, all of those things. So, today's podcast is on a topic that I actually shared out earlier this week in a post, just a graphic, and then also a blog. And so I want to say, I'm a forever educator. And just like when I was teaching my very first classrooms 15 years ago, I want our listeners, the community of Positivity Wins, to have different avenues to connect and absorb this content. And so if you are not a podcast listener at all, I'm going to stop you right now and say, get out of here. It is okay. Jump on the blog. It's themrbraun.com. And you can see all the blog posts there and you can easily read through the message of today's podcast. And today's message is refusing to let negativity win. So, yeah, we're going to talk about negativity today on the Positivity Wins podcast. So, I want to start out with this quote. You can't always control what happens around you, but you can control what wins inside you. And that's what we're going to dive into today is how we choose to let negativity win so many times. But what can we do to make sure that does not happen? And so we'll work through our positivity playbook just like we have these first few episodes. We'll get through this today together. And so I always like to start out with a positive story, something that has happened in the past week or two around the country or around the world that I just saw and it made me smile. And it was thought that is cool. And this one goes out to Natalie Graybo from New Jersey. She's 80 years old and she became the oldest Ironman finisher this past week in Hawaii. And what is so cool about this is that, yeah, she's 80 years old and she's doing a full Ironman, biking 112 miles, running 26.2. Also, in an Ironman, if you know anything about it, you got to swim a couple miles. And Natalie did not start swimming or did not learn how to swim until she was 59 years old. How cool is that? And so the positive story, the message behind it is so it's never too late to start something new, try something new, pick up a new hobby, or just say, you know what? I've never done that before. Today's your day. And now let's get into it. Let's ask the expert here. And like I said, today's topic is refusing to let negativity win. And so my question for you is ask yourself right now, when was the last time that you caught yourself feeding negativity instead of fighting it? And so, how do we feed negativity? We tune in to gossip, we lean in, we say, yes, me too. We just give our time and our energy to negative people or to negative environments, negative situations. Sometimes we're the whole problem ourselves. And I think we've all been guilty of being that person a time or two in our lives. And so, the three topics we're really going to get into are recognizing the enemy, which is negativity, rejecting the invite to get involved at all, and then replacing it with, you guessed it, positivity. And so, number one here, recognize the enemy. The enemy is negativity. And just like we typically talk about on these episodes, we can find negativity everywhere in our lives. We see it in our workplaces, we see it on our teams, we see it in our schools, but we also see it in our family a lot. And some people's situations are a little bit bigger than others, but I think every family has at least one negative or toxic person in it. And then obviously our society is just consumed and overflowing with negativity all around it. And that's why we're here today. That's why I'm talking to you today. And that's why we started this podcast is because I'm tired of it. I want to fill our feeds and our communities with more positivity. And so I already talked about a couple of these, but what is the enemy? It's gossip, right? We already have an entire episode if you go back and listen to gossip over growth, but it's also complaining, like just small, complaints of this isn't right, that's not right, this place is never a good place to be. I hate coming here. All of those things, just that constant complaining that takes its toll. And it is very, very contagious as well. And then self doubt. This could be you on a personal level, day in and day out, in all three of those situations. But it's just that self doubt that I'm never enough, or I can't do this right. I can't do that right. I think we've all had that at some point. I think others fight it constantly on a day in and day out basis. And we've got to, respect those people and be there for them with positivity, those self doubters. And then lastly, just toxic environments. I think we've all found ourselves in those before, whether again, it's a workplace, a family setting, a social setting, a friendship, where it's just toxic. It's not good for you. And I've already, hinted at this and talked a little bit about this in past episodes, but we've got to take control and we've got to remove ourselves from those toxic environments. And so, number one is just recognizing it and saying, hey, this is the situation I'm in. And a lot of times, at first, we don't see that situation and we definitely don't see the impact that it's having on us in a negative way. And so you can't win the battle, right? You can't win this battle of negativity if you don't see what you're fighting. And so sometimes we just gotta say, whoa, like this is not good for me. This isn't good for anyone here. And we got to recognize the enemy. That's number one. Number two is to reject the invite. All right. When the negativity comes at you, we're going to recognize it, but then we are going to make a choice to say, nah, this isn't me. This isn't who I want to be. This isn't who I want to be around. This isn't who I want to associate myself with. I want to choose positivity because it is a daily choice that we make when we wake up. Some days are harder than others. And I said this in my post. If you're going to check out that blog, I said, your life doesn't have to be perfect to be positive. And then the next one is to water your flowers. This is something I talk a lot about in PD when I talk to school leaders, especially talk about watering your flowers instead of your weeds. And I think this is very easy for leaders to do. This is easy for us that are surrounded by negativity to do. What are your weeds? Your negative people that are in your organization, that are on your team. We want to give them all the attention, right? They're usually the loudest voice in the room and they take up all your time and all your energy. And we find ourselves giving 95% of our time and our energy to the one or two or three weeds, right? But just like out there in your flower garden or in your landscape, if you spend all your time just constantly tackling those weeds and you forget to water the flowers, that takes up 95% of your garden or your landscape. What happens? They die, right? And so this is happens on organizations and on teams is when we spend all our time and energy fighting the negative people, we realize that we lose all the flowers that are around us. Those people that would literally run through a wall for you when they see the impact, the negative impact that it's having, you giving all your time to those negative people, then they're going to start losing support. And then here are some practical solutions for you just to pause. All right. When you see negativity coming and you're going to reject it, pause before you respond or before you react, reflect. One thing that I always say to leaders, and I was guilty of this my first couple years as principal, is you don't have to have an answer right away. A lot of times when you want to answer immediately, your answer is going to be negative or your answer is not going to be the best answer. Maybe you just respond out of impulse. And so it is okay to say, you know what, I don't know the answer. Or I'm going to take a couple hours. I'm going to take the night to think about this and I'll get back to you tomorrow. That is okay to do. And or another strategy would be to redirect, right? Redirect the conversation. Hey, yeah, this place has, its downfalls, but the grass isn't greener on the other side. Or to say, you know what, I'm going to stick up for that person and say, quit talking bad about them. Wouldn't say it to their face. Don't say it now. All those times that where we find ourselves just kind of nodding our head and going along with the conversation, we need to be more upstanders and say, no, this isn't okay. And you don't have to make it a big scene. You can simply redirect the conversation the way you want it to go towards positivity. And then let's replace it with positivity. We've already talked about this a little bit. It's the three R's: to recognize, reject, and replace. Replace is so important that we don't just let it go or we don't ignore negativity. We've got to replace it with our energy and our positivity. It's contagious, right? Whether you want to choose negativity or positivity, they're both extremely contagious. So we're going to choose to replace it with positivity. And so some practical strategies here are gratitude over grumbling. You know, like we've already talked about, when you hear grumbles in the lounge or in your friends' circles, replace that with gratitude. Hey, I am so grateful for that leader. Without them, I wouldn't have a job. Without them, this place would be a true dumpster fire, whatever it may be. But trying to replace those grumblings that you hear with your own gratitude. Solutions over complaints. I think this is so important. I would say this a lot as a principal. When people would have complaints about something, I would say, okay, then what are we going to do about it? Right? Don't bring complaints to the table unless you have a solution. Talk to your team members about that. Talk to those that you lead and say, it is okay to not be okay, right? No organization is perfect, but when we have complaints and we're going to bring topics to the table, then let's have solutions with us that we bring. And then the last one, again, I have a whole episode on this, but growth over gossip. When we choose to make growth the priority in our culture instead of gossiping, then we're going to see success. It's that simple. Choosing growth over gossip will lead you to success and wins every single day. And then as we wrap up this topic, at the end of the day, sometimes you just have to let them, right? And so if you haven't read it yet, check out the Mel Robbins book, Let Them. It's got a great podcast as well that I listen to routinely. And be your authentic self. This is something that I wrestled with. I had a friend reach out to me this week after reading the blog and said, man, I struggle with this because people see my positivity as a negative thing, as something that, is not wanted in our organization. I struggled with this and I flat out told him, then maybe you need to find a better place where you fit in, a place that takes your positivity and appreciates it and sees the value that it brings to the organization. I think sometimes we have to have that real conversation with ourselves or with those that are around us and say, you know what, maybe this isn't the best place for me if I'm not appreciated here. And so be your authentic self. Don't change for anyone or for any place. I tell a story when I provide PD about when I took my first job as an assistant principal. And I was a teacher that showed up in Nikes and khakis every day. And I was great at building relationships with students. And I saw success because of it. When I took my first AP job, I went out to Kohl's and I got a bunch of ties and the shiniest dress shoes that I thought they had there because I thought that's what an AP was supposed to look like. And I ruled with an iron fist because I thought that's what an AP was supposed to do. And it was a few months into the job that I had a really impactful moment with a student, and it involved them grabbing my brand new necktie and choking me. And it was in that moment I felt like my life was flashing before my eyes that I realized, you know what? This isn't me. This isn't who I am. I'm going to lead my way. I'm going to do this job my way. And the rest was history. I was able to build relationships as a principal, as an AP, and see incredible results because of the way that I led. And that was my authentic way. It wasn't because it's supposed to be this way as an AP or principals are supposed to do it this way. I said, you know what? I don't care. At the time I was 26 years old, I'm going to do this my way. And the results came. So, how do we wrap this up? Well, we're going to wrap it up by saying what we say at the end of every episode: when positivity wins, we all win. When we choose to not let negativity be the priority, be the driver in our culture, then we are going to see the wins. I say this a lot. I'm a sports guy. I love sports. You won't see a sports team win a national championship, world championship, whatever you want to call it, with negativity in their clubhouse, in the locker room. All right. It's the reality of it. It's black and white. So negative people, negative teams, negative organizations do not see results. And so your power move, leadership matters. I know we have a lot of leaders that tune into this podcast, but also we have people from all walks of life. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. You do not need a title to lead. Leadership matters each and every day in all the circles that you're in. Super quick story. I was in Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago for work, and I was attending a conference for a national private school company that School Life has a really great relationship with. And at this conference, their CEO was there. And I thought it was impressive that he was there at this conference. He was showing face, but he took it a step farther. He went into a session with over 200 principals of this private school company. And for 60 minutes, his session was ask Steve anything. That was the only slide he used. And he got not on stage, he walked the floor the entire time. And he said, ask me anything you want. No script, no questions thrown at him before. It was true, real, authentic leadership. For 60 minutes, he was under fire. There was a lot of good questions that came out of it, but there was a period during that session because I stood in the back room. I thought, I want to see how this works. There was some negativity in the room, right? Like real hard questions, not gossip, but like, hey, this is happening. Not sure if you know about it, but how can we fix this type of questions? He stood there and he took it for 60 minutes. And what I loved most was how authentic he was and how real he was. He listened to every question and he was not afraid to say, you know what? I didn't know that was happening. You know what? I don't know the answer, but he had somebody taking notes. He said, write that down and we are going to find an answer for you. That's leadership. That matters, folks. And then our final buzzer beater, a challenge, our takeaway call to action for you is to be visible. Whether you're in a leadership position or not, get out and be visible. One thing I say for teachers, every PD that I share, is if you are not greeting your students at the door, start it tomorrow, right? So many takeaways, so many benefits to that, but it's everywhere. That all walks of life, we can do that. Greet each other at the door because so many times when we don't see things, we don't know. And we don't know, it's our human nature to just assume. We all know what that makes us. And so get out, be visible, let people know how much you care this week. That's all I've got. Thank you again for tuning in to episode 5 of the Positivity Wins podcast. I'm your host, Ross, and I would love it if you liked this, if you commented on it, and if you shared it out on your platforms. This is how we grow. And I'm not ashamed to ask. I would love your support. Thanks again. When positivity wins, we all win.